everyone, so welcome to my DiverseAthon and Slowathon wrap up. You may notice I'm in a different place again. I'm always in a different place, but this time I'm here to stay, well, for a while. But I've moved into uni accommodation now and I'm nice and settled. I've got all my stuff sorted and it just feels lovely to be settled somewhere and not be like surfing between other people's houses. I think I worked out that over the past month or so I have slept in 8 different beds. It's nice to be in a bed that's semi-permanent. Also, check out my cool board thing. Took freaking ages. Overall, I had a really good time over the course of both of these readathons. I didn't really get to take part in any of the sprints or anything like that, or any of the discussions, because it was such a hectic, busy week. And in the first half of the week, I got a lot more reading done, whereas the books that I had left for the second half of the week kind of fell by the wayside because moving took a lot more energy than I factored in. The books that I didn't manage to get read, I will be reading in the future, and of course, I will be reading more Own Voices books in Own Voices October, and I will leave all the information to that down below. Slowathon really got me thinking about how I approach reading as well. I've become very numbers focused in the past few months, and that's not healthy for reading. I really do want to make more of an effort to slow down with my reading and think about it critically and mark little quotes and stuff that stand out to me. Reading is definitely a form of self-care, and I really want to be more mindful when I'm doing it from now on. My first suggestion for the Slowathon was to read a book and mark it up, and for this I had planned to read Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng. I didn't get this done. I'm only like a chapter or 2 into this. So far I'm really enjoying it. I just picked it up in the middle of moving and travelling and it just wasn't the right time for me. But I will be picking this up in Own Voices October. The next suggestion for the Slowathon was to read a book and create something inspired by it. And for this I wrote a poem based on some of the things that I learned from the Title Zone by Sarah Moss. The reason I thought this kind of suited the DiverseAthon was because it was told from the perspective of a father, a stay-at-home father as well, which is a perspective we don't always get to see. And often when I'm reading about parent-child relationships, which is something I'm really interested in, I am reading from the child's perspective. So it was really interesting to see a more grown-up parental perspective, especially from a male character. I loved this book so much. This book was so freaking good. I've had to return it to the library, unfortunately, but I loved it. I loved it so much. So this book is told from the perspective of a man named Adam, who is a stay-at-home dad, and one day he gets a phone call from his daughter's school telling him that she has collapsed and stopped breathing. This book basically follows her journey to recovery and how everyone in the family reacts to that event. You follow Adam becoming increasingly paranoid and worried and concerned for his daughter's well-being and his other younger daughter as well. Writing in this was so incredibly beautiful and touching and very funny at points and very blunt at points. This book made me understand a parent's love in a way I never have before. That's always been something that kind of baffles me, like how you can love a thing you made that so like unconditionally. It kind of blows my mind a little bit, and I have like a huge amount of respect for good parents. This book got me as close to understanding parental love as I feel like I can get without actually having a child. I did write 2 poems based on certain lines in the book that struck me, and hopefully I will upload them here one day when they get polished off a little bit. The next challenge was to do a buddy read and discuss the book through that buddy read, and I planned on reading I Am Malala by Malala Yousafzai, but I haven't got to that one yet. Again, it was one that I was planning on picking up after I moved, and it didn't get done. Moving really takes a lot of like mental effort. I was also reading this as part of Jean's Feminist Orchestra, which was my buddy read for it because I didn't have time to organise one, and I knew in the week it was I wouldn't be committed to discussing the book with someone every day. But I will definitely be picking it up over the next few days. The next challenge was to read a book out loud, and for this I picked Teaching My Mother How to Give Birth by Warsan Shire. Warsan Shire is a Kenyan-born Somali poet based in London. Really good at saying that now. This has a lot to do with bodies, particularly women's bodies and the relationships women have, and it has a lot to do with Islam, and I really enjoyed it, and I found reading it out loud definitely helped. There were some terms that I was unfamiliar with, but there is like a little thing at the back that explains some of the terms that readers might be unfamiliar with. I definitely learned a lot from this one, and it got me thinking about things that I hadn't really thought about before. One of my favorites was a poem called Ugly. I thought Ugly was really, really good. But yeah, I would highly, highly recommend this one. You should definitely check it out if you are interested in any of those themes or just poetry in general. The next challenge was to read a book that intimidates you, and for this I chose Wait by Jeanette Winterson, who is a writer who is gay. Wait is a retelling of the myth of Atlas and Heracles, and that's why it intimidated me. I didn't really know anything about that original kind of myth, so I wasn't sure if it would kind of go over my head a little bit, but the story was actually really, really accessible and I really, really enjoyed it. I think some of it did maybe go over my head a little bit, or maybe not go over my head, but I possibly just would have got more out of it and appreciated it a little bit more if I was familiar with the myth. So I am planning on going and finding a version of the myth to read. This was really short and I really, really enjoyed it. It's not my favorite thing that I've ever read by Jeanette Winterson, but she's written so much that, you know, you're bound to say that every few books you read by her. Next challenge was to reread something and compare your experiences. Didn't get this one done, soz. I would still really highly recommend the book I was planning on reading, The Reluctant Fundamentalist, because it's just, it's really good. The Reluctant Fundamentalist just really exposes like your internalized prejudices, and it's just really good. The next suggestion for the Slowathon was to read a book and review it on your platform, and there should be a review of this book going up on my blog and on Goodreads tomorrow, and that is Just Juliet by Charlotte Reagan. And, okay, so this is about a teenage girl who has always kind of assumed that she was straight because she was really interested in guys. Then she meets another teenage girl named Juliet who is quite openly a lesbian. And basically she comes to realize that she has very strong feelings for her. She's very attracted to this girl. And after doing a bit of research, she comes to terms with the fact that she is bisexual. I really appreciate that representation. As you may be aware, I'm always on the hunt for books that have bisexual characters, and I do really, really think it's great that this book openly deals with bisexuality, but the writing leaves a lot to be desired. There's very little plot in this book. This isn't really any sort of in-depth or unique exploration of sexuality or bisexuality. Like, it is very basic, and maybe if you're not familiar at all with bisexuality, this might be a good kind of intro to it, possibly. I appreciate the effort that the author went to include diversity in the book. Obviously we've got a lesbian character, a bisexual character, we have gay men, we have young mothers, we have people of colour, but I found when the author was dealing with groups that she wasn't a part of, it became quite problematic. There are several points in the book where I just felt it was a little bit problematic. I found a lot of the characters were really two-dimensional, and I found the writing was just full of telling and no showing. There was a huge amount of just summary in this book, and it was really frustrating. It put a real barrier between the reader and the characters. I didn't feel like I actually got to know the characters that well, because I feel like so few of them actually had complex personalities. They just kind of had superficial, kind of on the surface traits. There was a huge amount of description about people's clothes, which was just really boring. So overall, I thought it was like a nice enough story, and I'm really glad that there was that representation of a bisexual main character, but just the quality of the writing wasn't up to standard for me. The next suggestion for the Slowathon was to read a book and then do secondary reading based on this, and I decided to read Americanah by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I really, really enjoyed this book. I think I enjoyed the second half a lot more than the first half. This book has a huge amount of exploration of what it's like to be a person of colour, more specifically a woman of colour, but generally a person of colour. What it's like to be African, what it's like to be specifically Nigerian, what it's like to be African, a person of colour, Nigerian, any kind of combination of the three in both Britain and in America, and the kind of differences there are in how the white people of that country treat people of colour or people from other countries. I feel like this book was also very much informed by the reaction that the author had from her previous work. I've not read any of her previous work, but I really, really want to, and I definitely will. I do try to be as strong and good of an ally as I can, but there is only so much you can understand when you are not in that position. While I think I've been aware of a lot of the issues that are dealt with in Americanah, it took me that step further into having an insight into experiences I will never have, like being worried about the impression an afro hairdo will give to employers and stuff. I'm never gonna have that experience, so I'm never gonna fully understand what it's like, but I feel like this book took my understanding to a slightly higher level than it was before reading it. I did find the commentary on the differences between how people of colour are treated in America and Britain to be very interesting, and that's something I'd never thought about before. I really enjoyed doing the secondary reading on this as well because I feel like it did further that understanding even more. I will leave a link to a few of the articles that I ended up reading and a couple of videos that I ended up watching about the novel. There were a couple more books that I decided to plan on reading for the DiverseAthon. They weren't for any particular suggestion or challenge for the Slowathon, and the first of those was Stung by Jem Lester. Didn't get that read. The second of these books was If I Was Your Girl by Meredith Russo, and I bloody well loved this book. This book is the standard by which I want my young adult LGBT plus literature to be of. This is the standard. So this book is about a teenage girl named Amanda, and she is going to a new school. She begins to make loads of friends at this school, and she gets a lot of attention from the boys. Something that the reader knows that a lot of the characters that Amanda meets don't know is that Amanda was assigned male at birth and has gone through the process of transitioning. This isn't a spoiler, it happens fairly early on in the book, and I think it's in the blurb and stuff as well. But Amanda enters into a relationship with this boy named Grant, and this is genuinely one of the cutest, sweetest, just brilliant YA romances that I've read in so long. Like, it was so freaking good. It had me like awing, and it had me really rooting for the couple. It just gave me so many feels. I won't reveal how things go for that couple, but if you decide to pick the book up, and if you have read it already, I'm sure you would agree, you will really be rooting for this couple. If I Was Your Girl manages to be really accessible for people that might not know a lot about being trans or the struggles that trans people face. Like, it conveyed those messages of basically like, don't ask me about my genitals, don't ask me what my birth name is. But also dealing with it more complexly for people that are familiar with those things. There's also a little bit of focus on religion in this book as well, which was something that I've not really thought about that much. And it's set in the south of the United States, the southern states of America. Also a bisexual character in this, which I really appreciated. There was a really good author's note at the end as well, where Meredith, who is a trans woman herself, spoke about how this experience isn't just the one universal trans experience. She did make some decisions in order to make the book work in the way she wanted. Like, Amanda was very easily able to get medical treatment, and she was also able to pass as cisgendered really easily. The author really emphasized that this isn't every trans experience, which I thought was really, really good. But yeah, this was just a really good book, and you should read it. Read it now. Go finish this video, but then go read it. So that was my wrap up for the DiverseAthon and the Slowathon. I didn't get as much read as I planned on reading, and I didn't read all of the, as much diversity as I wanted to read, but obviously I will keep reading diversely. That's something that I think we should all remember coming out of the DiverseAthon, is that this hasn't stopped now that the week is over. And obviously we have Own Voices October, which is being run by Katie and Mel, coming up. So, you know, no excuses. I didn't do as great of a job with Slowathon. I don't think I appreciated my reading as much as I could have done. I didn't take as much time and care with it as I should have done. But not kind of doing that did make me realise that it's something that I need to do moving forward. Do let me know how these readathons went for you. Did you learn anything in particular from the DiverseAthon? Was there a book that you really did take your time with on the Slowathon? Let me know. If you read any of the books that I read or you want to read any of them, we can have a chat about them down in the comments. And I think I will see you in a few days for another book haul. Really, you can never have too many book hauls, am I right?